Alright, what's up viewers? Today we're going to be doing a completely new type of video. This is what I would consider the tier list for the May 2019 format until the next ban list hits. We've had a few tournaments, major tournaments that have gone on in the last few months, weeks, so we can kind of gauge what decks are considered tier 1, 2, 3, and kind of rogue decks that sometimes top, and then locals / online fun decks. This is the rubric I'm using here. So a tier 1 deck would be a deck that almost always tops at every single tournament, and it has multiple tops, multiple representation in that tournament. So you go to a regional and you'll see this deck in the top, I'll say 32 multiple times easily. Then you have tier 2 decks which top almost every event, but maybe you'll see one or two. You have tier 3 decks which they let's say there'll be like 2 or 3 tournaments and they'll usually get in there, or there'll be like one person with the deck. And then you have rogue decks, they top very once in a blue, and locals / online fun decks. So these are decks that you can play on yugioh Pro or at your locals, and you'll have a good time in a format where you only have to play a few matches, maybe like 4 matches or something like that. Not something where you'd have to take it to a regional, play 9 rounds, or something where you have to, you got to go to day 2. So it's just fun decks to play. So here we go. Let's get started. First of all, we've got in tier 1 Thunder Dragon. Thunder Dragon is an incredible deck. You can put with the Guard Dragon, Thunder Dragon kind of variant. You can put all types of negates on board. You can put on Crystal Wing if you choose, or the Dragon Abyss, the Red Dragon Abyss, which negates a card. You can use Sir Yugioh very advantageously, and that's if you mix it with the Guard Dragons. Even by itself, it's still kind of an incredible deck, because you have Thunder Dragon Colossus, which is one of the most insane boss monsters. Either way, I think it's a pretty incredible card. It stops your opponent from searching. It shuts down a lot of decks that can't deal with that. Just having one Thunder Dragon Colossus on its own is kind of scary, but they're able to easily summon 3, plus have all types of negates on the field. Also, they mix very well with dangers, which can again make it really scary because you can get them in the graveyard fairly quickly. A lot of cards have been hit over the last 2 ban lists that somewhat have hurt Thunder Dragon, but it seems like they're very adaptive and they just come out with something better. Also, you can use Sekka's Light if you build an all monster build. But Thunder Dragon is definitely in the top in terms of, is definitely a tier 1 deck. Next we've got Sky Strikers. The beautiful thing about Sky Strikers is it has a lot of good matchups against a lot of decks, and it just has the ability to constantly regain advantage, and it can go first and second. Those are like some of the more positive things about the deck. It sucks that Kagari got hit to 1, but multi-roll is Kagari, but way better because it brings back a whole bunch of cards and sets them right back. So as long as they have multi-roll, they're going to be a very good deck. I don't even know if they need 3 Kagaris. You have cards like Magnet Reverse and Ego Booster that can bring you back a Kagari if you really need to. But this deck, it got hit, but I don't think it got hit as severely as other people have said it would get hit. This is still a tier 1 deck. We might see over the next few months that it falls to a tier 2 deck because it drops a little bit in consistency. But like I said, it definitely is in the top cut in terms of the decks. I have this Final Countdown right here. It's not Final Countdown. This is actually a Mystic Mine burn deck. So Mystic Mine is one of the decks right now that people perhaps did not expect to be this good. It is very difficult to stop. It can beat any deck, any game 1. Any deck in game 1 it can usually beat. Any of the top decks, any of the tier 2 decks, it can beat almost any deck in game 1. Like, it's very difficult to win game 1 against this deck, particularly when you're playing like a Sekka's Light deck. I think just because of this deck, something like a Burning Abyss is far worse because unfortunately they don't have the tools to stop Mystic Mine going first, which is kind of frustrating. So the great thing about Mystic Mine is there's new builds literally being put up every few days. It's a deck that no one expected it to be doing this good, and it is winning various events. It's winning locals, it's winning regionals, it even won a few nationals in other countries. It's kind of an insane deck. It stops your opponent from activating any effect monsters or attacking, which is what really takes it to the next level. On top of that, you can play all types of burn cards to win instantly, or you can play something like a wave motion cannon and then win over 3 or 4 turns, because there's nothing really your opponent can do. Also, you have all kinds of cards like Metaverse that can stop your the cards like Metaverse that can throw out the field spell at any time. So let's say your opponent activates Twin Twisters, targets a set card, and targets your Mystic Mine. They can just activate Metaverse, you know, and just put out a new one. So it never really ends. So even siding in 3 Twin Twisters isn't guaranteeing you any type of a win. There's only a few decks in the meta that actually have a positive matchup against Mystic Mine. It might actually be the best deck in the format right now. It might be better than Sky Strikers, and it might be better than Thunder Dragon. These aren't really like ranked up here, but they're just ranked into their tiers. All right, next we've got Orcust. Orcust is a very good deck. Certainly, its going first boards are just scary. Like, it can put up 5-6 negates, and it's, when you look at what they're able to do with just 1 or 2 cards, they have incredible 1-card, 2-card combos that other decks really don't have. Even like, and the builds are like endless, because it's really just an engine. That's the crazy thing about Orcust. It really is just an engine. With Dingirsu coming out, it's just taking it to the next level, but it really is more an engine than it is a deck, so you can mix it with anything. I've seen Orcust Dark Magician, I've seen Orcust Cyber Dragon, Orcust, on our channel we have Orcust Nuturia. Just the amount of mixes that this deck can, or like combo, the type of mixes that this deck can be involved in is just scary. It can almost work with any other deck. But yeah, definitely the Orcust engine is just too incredible. It's definitely a tier 1 candidate. And then we have our last tier 1 deck, which is Salamangrates. Salamangrates are very readily available. Like, you see them everywhere. A lot of people are playing Salamangrates, and it's a very good deck because it can go first or second better than any other deck in this entire lineup. It can OTK going second, and it can set up a pretty formidable board going first. It's not the best. Like, that's the thing about Salamangrates. Salamangrates are not the most exciting deck to play, and they're also not the most over the top when it comes to what they can accomplish. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a very good deck, and what it has is consistency over all of these other decks. That's the thing about Salamangrates. It is a very, very consistent deck. It may not be the best in terms of what it can output at the end, but it is very consistent. It can always put out a negate, maybe an interruption in terms of a trap card, and then like 2 monsters. And don't forget the Valinx also protects out of the graveyard. So it can put out some like a very consistent board every single time. And it goes, you know, pretty plus. Going second, it can always OTK because Violent Chimera is just one of the scariest cards you've ever seen. It'll turn your monster to 0 and then attack you and win. It's kind of crazy. So that's what it has. It has versatility and it has consistency, but it's not exactly the most destructive deck. Next we've got, this is our tier 2 decks. We've got Trickstars. Trickstars is a very good deck. Still hasn't gotten hit in the OCG. I mean, in the TCG, it still has not gotten hit. We have everything at 3 in terms of Trickstars. It has multiple 1-card engines. It now has the Honest monster in the Trickstar lineup, which is, I forget the name off the top of my head, but basically it special summons itself and it can boost their attack. It has so many 1-card combos. It has Candido, which searches the field spell, which searches another monster. It has the field spell, which searches this, which searches another monster. It's kind of crazy. Like, everything searches itself. And it's a deck that can literally take a game off of anybody, because if they're just not prepared for it, you're going to burn them to death. And it works very well with Sky Strikers too, because they don't put out a lot of monsters. So overall, definitely going to be a tier 2 deck going forward. Like I said, it does top regularly, but it's not as pronounced as Salamangrates, and it also is a very high skill deck. Next we've got True Dracos. Not a very high skill deck, but a very good deck. This is one of the decks that you can pick up right now and win fairly easily. You don't. It's not the highest kind of skill gap deck, is what I'm saying. The reason it's very good right now is it has a good matchup against a lot of various decks, but particularly has a very good matchup against Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine is very pronounced in the meta right now. It is the best deck when not playing against True Dracos. The thing with True Dracos is True Dracos can use Diagram, pop their own cards, and then destroy Mystic Mine, and they can keep doing it over and over and over and over again. And then when they're done, they can activate one of their True Draco spell cards like Heritage, and then just draw off of it, or True Draco Disciples, and then draw off of it. So it's kind of crazy because they can just draw off the cards that they don't pop, and then they can pop them and then draw and then destroy your cards. It's kind of insane. It has like a built-in way of destroying Mystic Mine. And Mystic Mine, unless they're playing Jar of Avarice, if you destroy their 3 Mystic Mines, they're pretty much screwed. And more so if they do play Floodgates, like let's say True Dracos goes first against Mystic Mine, or let's say they go first against Mystic Mine, or Thunder Dragon, or any of these top decks, and they put out a Floodgate that even hurts their own deck, they can just tribute their own Floodgate and then play as if nothing happened. That's what makes True Dracos kind of over the top good. So if they anti-spell Fragrance, for example, against Sky Strikers or Mystic Mine, they could just tribute those cards, and it's like they were never activated. So True Dracos right now is probably better than it's ever been. If they had even a single what's his name, Masterpiece at this moment, I think they would probably be the best deck in the meta. If they had even one Masterpiece that they could both search and just keep on the field, I think they probably would be the best, because Masterpiece would be able to pop a card during both players' turns, in addition to just being unaffected by everything. So if they had even one, I think it really would be the best deck in the meta. Alright, coming up next, we've got Subterrors. Subterrors are probably actually better than what they're represented, but if you've ever gone to a tournament, let's say you have a 600-person tournament, there will be probably 100 Salamangreat players, and I'm not even joking with you, you'll be lucky if you find even 10 Subterror players. This deck is very, very high skill. It's very difficult to play, but if you can figure it out, it is a very rewarding deck. It constantly gets first, second, third place. The people who do play it are very good at it. It is a deck that doesn't really use the extra deck, so it can really utilize Super Polymerization, which just came back to 2, and we have more targets than ever for Super Polymerization. Stuff like Mud Dragon that came out in the tins. You have stuff like the New World Chalice monster that basically takes out 3 links. You have the Starving Venom Dragons. So it's very, very good. Plus you have this deck uses Pot of Extravagance very easily without any drawback. And it has basically a 1-card engine. You know, you use the field spell to search Guru, the Guru to search the Hand Trap, Nemesis, or you can go the opposite way around, Guru to Final Battle. And it's very consistent. It's very good. It has a lot of 1-card, 2-card combos. Very, very, very good deck, and it doesn't really struggle with putting out power because of what's it called? Subterror. I think it's Battle. It has no struggle whatsoever doing that, and it has Floodgates. It's decent going second, but it's very good going first. So overall, I think this deck would be a tier 1 deck if more people played it, but like I said, it's a very high skill deck and very few people play it. Alright, next we've got Altergeist. Altergeist has a decent matchup against the meta. The problem is it would even be a little bit higher. I'm kind of on the fence with Altergeist. I don't know if I want to put it as a tier 3 or a tier 1 deck, or a tier 2, so I kind of stuck it in the middle. The reason I'm putting it where it is now, I'm thinking about it. A lot of people play Twin Twisters and back row removal just to deal with Mystic Mine, and that actually hurts decks that use a lot of back row. So all decks that use back row are actually more hurt than they were before, just because it's very difficult. To play Altergeist without using the trap cards. So end phase, they can pop your cards, and then you're kind of screwed. You have personal spoofing, where you shuffle something into the deck for cost, and then they pop it. It's a very bad situation for you. But overall, Altergeist is still a very good deck. It uses Pot of Extravagance like Pot of Greed. It doesn't even hurt the deck. You really only use 2 extra deck monsters, which are Linkuriboh and Hexia. You don't even use the others. So overall, it's a very good deck. Going first. Going second, it's kind of underrated. It really can break boards, especially with Maul You Seek and Evenly Matched being able to be main decked. And then, you evenly matched and you get Multi-Faker, then you get a Siliquist off of, an evenly matched. So your opponent lost, 6 cards and you'll gain 2. It's kind of crazy. So overall, it's a very good deck. It does run out of gas sometimes, but I don't know if it can do as well in a meta where everyone's main decking 3 copies of Twin Twister. That's the only kind of downside to this deck. So we'll see going forward, but I still think it's a very good deck, and it's not getting hit on the ban list anytime soon as far as I'm concerned. Alright, next we've got another Tier 2 deck. Dinosaurs. Dinosaurs got a huge boost with Miscellaneousaurus. It now protects them. It lets them banish and summon from the graveyard, from the deck. It's very consistent. Very much more consistent. It sucks that Lithosagam is still banned because there's no use to really play the True Kings without Lithosagam. But this deck is very good because it can interrupt during your opponent's turn with, flipping things face down. It's extremely good in that regard. Additionally, it can OTK very easily. Its regular monsters are, 3,500 attack. I mean, what deck can put out monsters that are 3,500 attack at the snap of a finger without really even giving up much? And it's also, you can mix it with Shaddolls, you can mix it with a few different variants, or you can play it pure. But definitely it's come back to a large degree. It's a lot better than it was before. It is a far better deck, far more consistent deck. It has one of the best generic searchers in the game. Fossil Dig, it searches like everything. But it definitely, it's a very, very good deck. Just what Dinosaurs needed. It's definitely boosted up. We have regular Pendulum Magicians. Again, this is a deck that can very easily go first or second. And that's kind of what's taking the top 2 tier decks, setting them apart from the tier 3 and rogue decks, is that they can go first or second without really much of a problem. The problem with kind of rogue decks and somewhat tier 3 decks are that they need to go either first or second, and that kind of holds them back to a certain degree. Yeah, Pendulum Magicians can set up pretty horrific boards. As long as Metal Foes Electromite is in the meta, it's going to be very, very good. And there are boards that you can set up where it's like impossible for your opponent to do anything. They use Burrow's Savage Dragon very easily because of Tuning Magician. They can use things like Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, which is one of the most broken cards around. You return a card from your face-up extra deck, and then you get to negate something, which is kind of crazy. It's very easy to summon too. But yeah, the deck can set up quite a few negates and makes your life for your opponent very difficult. Also has like Mystic Valley Avion and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely it can go first extremely well, and just quite generally it can put out pretty gigantic monsters going second. So the deck is still probably tier 2, I would say. Alright, Burning Abyss is our first of the tier 3 decks, and some of you might not be so happy to hear this, but I'm only putting them in tier 3 because of really Mystic Mine. It is very difficult to beat Mystic Mine with Burning Abyss because you rely on a lot of the monster effects to get rid of your opponent's spawn trap cards. Just spot removal, stuff like Farfa, and you can't really use that stuff under Mystic Mine. It doesn't matter what you have, unless you have nothing on the field, and then you Foolish Burial Farfa or something, which most of the Burning Abyss builds currently are playing the Sekka's Light engine. So game 1 you've already lost, because if you're playing Sekka's Light Burning Abyss and your opponent's playing Mystic Mine, you just can't win that matchup. It's impossible, because you have all use monsters to remove everything, and they have a card that doesn't let your monsters do anything. So I mean, you have no way of getting rid of anything. So it's a very, very difficult matchup. And not only that, so in terms of that is a very difficult matchup. They do have Cherubini now, which makes things a lot better. I think if Mystic Mine wasn't in the meta, this would probably easily be a tier 2 deck. But as of right now, I'm putting him at tier 3. Cherubini makes this deck so much better, so much more consistent. It has a good matchup against virtually every other deck here. It has kind of a neutral matchup with some other decks. But really, Mystic Mine is stopping this deck from being better. This deck can still very much top, but it will take hard losses to Mystic Mine. You are going to have to build a side deck to basically counter that deck, and that's going to take up very, very serious deck space, which is unfortunate, or side deck space, when you really should be playing things that are more important. Next, we've got Invoked. Invoked recently actually won a few of, not won a few events, but topped a few events. Invoked Mech Knights. It's starting to come back to a certain degree. Still, I don't know how good they're going to be. It was kind of like a few sparse tops, which is what, you know, this category is. It's somewhat regular tops. It tops here and there, but it doesn't really like win, and it doesn't top very regularly. It's still a very good deck. You can still easily summon Mechabuzz. Overall, you know, they have a bunch of inherent summons in terms of the Mech Knight cards. It's a good blend. So Mech Knight Invoked is still a very good deck. We've got Spirals, recently won a regional. Spirals are always going to be they're going to be a crazy deck. They're never going to be as crazy as when they came out, when everything was at 3, because when they came out, they were a tier 0 deck. Nothing could beat them. They were literally the best Link deck at that time. You could argue that they were probably the best Link deck ever, and that was before the Nightmares came out. They were considered the best Link deck ever. So this deck consistently, very consistently, U-Links. It's the only deck that I think in the game right now can U-Link very regularly, which shuts down a lot of decks. In terms of it, you know, how good can it really be? We saw recent first place, but, you know, can you duplicate that over 3-4 games? I don't know. It has a lot of positives. Its negatives that it's very fragile, very interruptible. One hand trap can sometimes just completely stop the deck, and then you get OTK'd. But overall, like I said, the deck is very good. Not the most consistent deck right now, but very, very good. All right, next we've got Prank Kids, another tier 3 deck. It would be higher, but this is a deck that has so much trouble playing through negates, because if they just negate your polymerization, you basically lose. It is so reliant on... It has a few starting combos, right? You can play 2... You can have... Your starting combo can be like an Insta-Fusion and a Prank Kids, that's fine. You can have 2 Prank Kids and a polymerization, that's a fine combo. That's probably the bread and butter one. That's the one that you build your deck to get most often. You can have something like a... I forget the card's name, but it's the Prank Kids card that you can discard a Prank Kids card to summon a token and a Prank Kids monster. If you have that combo, you can still survive. So overall, you know, the deck has a few combos where if you have certain cards, you can still do okay. But what you really want is a polymerization and 2 Prank Kids. And the problem is, when you're playing in a meta where there's so many negates, particularly against Salamangreats, where they're very consistently able to put up a negate, it's very difficult for you to win against anything that can negate a Spell Trap card. It's very difficult to do that, because if you activate polymerization, they negate it. There's not enough resources in your hand, typically, to do anything with the Prank Kids. And the last thing you want is to just, because if you don't have those combos that I mentioned, you basically have to just summon a Prank Kid in defense mode and end your turn. And there's literally nothing you can do. There's nothing else you can do. You have to be able to get 2 monsters on the field, or have one of those combos opened up. And it's kind of difficult. Not to mention the deck space is very tight. You can't really play too many hand traps in the deck. And also Summon Sorcerers got hit, so you can't even go through the Thunder Dragon combos anymore. You used to be able to summon easily a Thunder Dragon Colossus, a Totally Awesome, and any Prank Kids monster, basically Fusion monster or Link monster. But now you can't even do that consistently. And that, by the way, was only a 2 Prank Kids and a polymerization. It was that simple of a combo. You can't even do that anymore because Summon Sorcerers unfortunately got hit. But it's still a very good deck. With all of that said, it's still a very good deck. It has a few consistency issues, but it is still a very good deck. Hopefully they come out with a few more Prank Kids cards, but we'll see where the future takes this deck. Alright, next we've got Crusadia. This is regular Crusadia, pure Crusadia. Very, very good deck. I've seen people at locals and even, regionals easily top with this deck. Equimax is one of the most insane cards ever printed. You could pause this video right now, go just read Equimax. He gains attack for If you breathe, he gains attack. That's how crazy he is. You can easily like he gains attack for every monster that points to him. There's built-in protection in the deck. Every card that he points to, he gains attack for that. Equimax is one of the craziest cards. You can mix it with Guard Dragons, obviously, but even pure Crusadia is very, very good. You can still win, and it is reliant on going second. You have to go second. That's the problem. With regular Crusadia, you have to go second. With Crusadia or Guard Dragons, you can go first or second. It doesn't matter. You actually prefer to go first. But this deck can actually go first and second. If you're playing pure Crusadia, you have to go second. You have to, because you're playing through the kaijus and everything. But definitely, both pure Crusadia and Crusadia Guard Dragons are a very good deck. They are a tier 3 deck. They have some consistency issues, that's without a doubt. And their combos are interruptible, because everyone's main decking a million hand traps right now. But overall, it's a very good deck. It's scary to play. It's scary to try to play through one of their first turn boards, but it's definitely a very good deck. Next, we've got Paleozoic Frogs. Paleozoic Frogs overall are they're a good deck. They've fallen significantly recently, and there was at one point like a year and a half ago where we were saying to limit Toad or ban Toad, and people were saying to get rid of some of these cards, and nothing ever got hit over the few years with Paleozoics, and yet they're still kind of in deep trouble. They're not as good as they used to be. They lose to any evenly matched, because most of the time your field is I set 5 cards and I set 1 monster in defense mode, I end my turn. That is the field of a Paleozoic Frog deck, and it loses to Danko Seko without even thinking. I mean, you literally cannot, if they don't draw Solemn Judgment or Solemn Warning, they lose the duel. In terms of playing against them. And again, you have to keep in mind, if side decking and main decking against Mystic Mine, and you're playing a deck that is reliant on spell and trap cards, it's going to be very difficult for you to win. So it kind of shifts down here to tier 3. I almost would put it into rogue status, except it's been winning over the last 2 years, so I can't really say that. Or winning or topping over the last 2 years about. Also, Trap Trick is better in this deck than it is in any other deck in this entire list. It is disgusting in this deck. It can get you... It's like terraforming during your opponent's turn for any card. It's kind of crazy how good Trap Trick is in this deck. And you don't have to... You can wait until the end phase and use it. Like, that's what's... You can... like, let's say you have... And the things you can Trap Trick are, like, endless. You can Trap Trick into Reckless Greed, which is just insane. It doesn't even hurt you that often. So, Paleozoic Frogs, it's got some positives going for it, it's got some negatives, but I think once we shift out of the Mystic Mine meta, I think it'll be a significantly better deck, but as of right now, I think it's stuck in sort of this tier 3 status. Next, we've got ABCs. ABCs will always be good in Link format, just because of how their card text is set up. They don't miss timing on anything. When you link them away, you get to resolve their whatever their effect is to summon a monster from hand, or add from graveyard, or search from deck. Like, no matter which one, ABC, it doesn't matter which one you use, they're very good with Link format, and that's why they have been where they are. They top here and there, but I guess their biggest issue is at this point just consistency. They are a very good deck, though. I mean, you can't, don't get me wrong, they are a very good deck. ABC Buster Dragon is still a very scary card. It banishes a card. Like, you discard to banish, but it's still a very, very good, very, very good boss monster. It's easy to get 2 or 3 of them. It's easy to go into Cyber Dragon Infinity in this deck. So it works overall pretty dang well in Link format in general, but even in this current format. Also, Platinum Gadget came out recently, which is very good for the deck. Helps, kind of turbo out. It's the best Link monster they've had so far. Before, they've had Hippo Shinigami and other generic Link 2s, but I think this is actually the best Link monster they've had to use. The best Link monster they've had to use. Next, we've got Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon could literally wipe out any deck. Like, I've seen the problem with Cyber Dragon is it tops very inconsistently. Like, it has top 8'd, it has gotten very, very high, but it's never, I don't think it's ever won a major, like a regional or a YCS or anything. It's gotten top 8. So it comes very close, and it tops here and there. The problem with it going first with Cyber Dragon is very difficult, particularly now that Summon Sorceress got hit. With Summon Sorceress, going first with Cyber Dragon wasn't really that much of a pain, because you could set up a pretty disgusting board. But going first now with Cyber Dragon, I mean, what do? You just make one infinity and end your turn? I mean, it's very difficult for them to do anything. That's basically it. You summon an infinity and you end your turn, you hope for the best. That's going first with Cyber Dragons. Going second, they can wipe out anybody. They can summon basically, yeah, they could summon one of the Chimeras, destroy your back row, attack you multiple times. This is off of like a power bond. I mean, it's crazy what they could do second. They can get rid of your problem monsters with yugioh, which is searchable. They can now search with Emergency Cyber. They can search Galaxy Soldier, which is kind of crazy. They're very consistent. They search very easily. So going second, they can basically win against any deck. Their major problem is just going first. And that's kind of what's holding them apart from being top tier. Like, this has to go first. This has to go first. I mean, this has to go second. This has to go first. This kind of wants to go second, but it can go either way. And this has to kind of go first. Like, a lot of these decks down here want to go either first or second, and it's holding them back from being a top tier deck because they don't really have a strategy for the opposite way of playing. If they're going second deck, they can't really go first. If they're going first deck, they can't go second. That's kind of a problematic thing. That's why they are where they are. Alright, this is actually the last tier 3 deck. It's Enderman. Enderman is very good. It puts a lot of negates on the board. A lot of people don't even know how to play against it. It's fairly new. It is a very good deck. It recently topped a few times at events. It's a very, very good deck. Some people say it was actually underwhelming and overhyped, but I'd say it's a pretty good deck. Like I said, it's not going to be tier 1 anytime soon. It might get a little more support because you got to keep in mind this is a new deck. It might get new support in the next few sets. But as of right now, I think it is very fairly placed as a tier 3 deck. But it is, somewhat consistent. And now we've got the rogue decks. These are decks that top very sparsely, but they can top. They are good. They're just missing some of the tools to be, kind of top tier. All right, we've got, this is, what is it, World Chalice. World Chalice, if you've ever seen World Chalice, is scary. Like, when you don't draw a hand trap, the field that World Chalice can set up is virtually unbeatable. It really is. It's just a scary, scary, scary board. And they just got Idly, which is the synchro monster that turns one of their cards into a tuner, and now they have tuner plays, which is kind of on the next level of insanity. It's very, very good. So basically, yeah, World Chalice, if you don't draw a hand trap, they are the scariest thing of all time. If you draw a hand trap, they, summon one monster and end their turn. That's the problem with World Chalice. Very fragile. But overall, it's a rogue deck. It can top. It can definitely win you a locals. That's without question. Without question, you can win 4 rounds with World Chalice very easily. Here we go. Next, we've got Necros. Necros is a very good rogue deck. I don't think it has the consistency to be a tier 1 or tier 2 or even a tier 3 deck. It is a very good rogue deck. It does have a good matchup against some of the cards in the tier 1 meta. It has a good matchup against Salamangreats. It has a decent matchup against Sky Strikers. It has a pretty decent matchup against decks that want to use go through their entire extra deck. That's the thing. They're very good against that. But overall, it has a hard matchup against things like Mystic Mine. And Mystic Mine seems to be just defining our meta right now. But there's nothing you can really do about it. Also, it has various strange matchups with Floodgates, where if you activate Anti-Spell Fragrance, like what are they going to do? Their turn is botched. It's gone. There's nothing that they can do. And that's the problem with playing decks like Necros and decks like Prank Kids, is they have a hard loss against Floodgates. Like Prank Kids, for example, they can't play through. There's three major Floodgates in our meta. It's there can only be one: Rivalry of the Warlords and Goes in Match. And Prank Kids, for example, can't play through any of them, so they have a tough matchup with any deck that can main deck that kind of stuff. Well, they can play through. They can play through. There can only be one, obviously, because that's more fine. It's more of a nuisance, but they can play through that. Necros is the same way. They have trouble playing through something like that. Through floodgates, they have trouble playing through any of the Imperial Orders or anti-spawn fragrances or anything of that sort, including Mystic Mine, which is the most powerful floodgate in the meta right now. So Necros overall is probably is more of a rogue status, and it's decent. Don't get me wrong. Especially being able to use Zaborg. But we'll see where the future takes it with this deck. There might be some more cards lifted off the ban list. We'll see where this goes. Alright, next we've got Trains. Never underestimate Trains. They are a hard-going second deck. But they will kill you. They can put 6,000, 7... Like, they've put amounts in terms of on the board, in terms of damage, that you've never even thought a card could put. And at the last few regionals, I've seen people top with this deck. Not win, but top. I mean, this deck is scary to play against. Have you ever played against it and you're playing something like Sky Strikers, where your strongest monster is 1500 attack, and you try to play against one of these Train decks where they have a monster that's unaffected by everything and is like 6000 attack? It's very difficult to play against them. You can't even Widow Anchor or anything, can't do anything. But overall, this is a very, very, very good deck. A little inconsistent and a little bit, well, definitely inconsistent, but definitely very contingent on going second. Next, we've got Evil Eyes. Here's the issue with Evil Eyes. I mean, again, they're good, and once they have the problem with Evil Eyes is they take a little bit of gas to set up. Like, that's the issue. They take a little bit to set up. Like, they're good. Like, once you set everything up, they are a very good deck, but it takes a little bit of setup. Like, they have a field spell that searches their cards, and then they have their equip card that protects the monster protects the equip card. So once you have this lock going on, the deck is very good. The problem is you have to kind of set up that lock, and this deck can top. It's a very inconsistent deck in terms of topping, but it is pretty good at getting up that lock setup. It dies to a Kaiju, which is problematic, and you can make that argument about a lot of decks. You can make that argument at Sky Strikers. But the difference between Sky Strikers and this is that if you Kaiju this, they lose the equip spell, they lose a lot. But if you Kaiju a Sky Striker, they still have all of their set back row that they can activate once their Kaiju is gone, So overall, I think it's a very good deck, but it's still, I think it could really use some more support at this time to make it a little bit better. Next, we've got Wither Painters. Wither Painters have gotten a huge boost in the most recent set, Dark Neostorm. They've gotten a card that lets them special summon from the deck during their opponent's turn, which is huge. Because a lot of the time, it was a very slow deck, but now this has significantly sped up the deck. And they are very able to play floodgates within the deck to slow down their opponent. So it has it's like double positive, right? So you can slow down your opponent with floodgates that don't hurt yourself, but at the same time, you are now able to special summon far more monsters than you could before. Also, this deck is very good at dodging. It's very good at dodging. Very good at dodging hand traps, because it places things on the field, so it dodges things like Ash, it dodges things like Ogre. It's very good for that purpose. So overall, I think it's a pretty good rogue deck. I probably use one more or two more support cards, but the recent support card has been very good. Next, we've got Mermills. Mermills with Orcust has been shown to be pretty good. I guess the major problem with it right now is the most popular build is the Sekka's Light build, and it suffers the same problem that Burning Abyss suffers, which is that how in the world are you supposed to play through Mystic Mine with a deck that doesn't play spell and trap cards? I mean, it's virtually impossible. So, and it's not as consistent as Burning Abyss, right? Burning Abyss is they do the same thing. Burning Abyss and Mermills do more or less the same thing in terms of, kind of boards that they create and using cards out of their deck, sending them to the graveyard, activating their effects. So they do a lot of the same things, and they also main deck Sekka's Light. And the biggest issue with these two decks is that they don't quite have the consistency to beat Mystic Mine. As a problem for them, but it's definitely a very good deck. Next, we've got Zombies. I think this deck could actually be better than what it is here, but I'm just putting it here on the tier list. Super Polymerization recently came to 2, and you can turn everything your opponent controls into a zombie and then fuse their 2 problem monsters away, which is so broken you don't even believe how broken that is. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Also, Zombie World is very good for just disrupting all types of things. You turn everything your opponent controls into a zombie. You wait till they normal summon 1 monster, and then you flip Rivalry of the Warlords, and then they can't summon anything else from their hand or their deck or their graveyard. Or their hand or their deck, because nothing in there is a zombie, so they can't special summon anything out of there. Also, their boss monster is just wild. I mean, he negates. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, Zombie World zombies are very good. We'll see where it goes, but definitely they're kind of a scary deck. I don't know if they might move up a little bit depending on further support, but very good deck. Next we've got Lunalights. Lunalights have taken a major hit. They had a going first ability just one format ago, because they had the rank up magic card for what are they called? For Phantom Knights, which would actually give them a going first board. Because that's the problem with this deck, is it can't go first. It can go second. It's very good at going second, but it can't go first. And there were several things that were a major part of that board, which was the rank up card and summon sorcerers. And without those two, this deck really has trouble going first. It can still go second. It can still summon a monster with 7,000 attack that can attack twice very easily. But this deck, as of right now, has virtually no going first boards, and that's the problem with it. If it goes second, it almost always wins, and it can play through almost anything. It can make I forget his exact name, but the Tiger King, and it negates all your opponent's monster effects. That card is insane. So you make one of those, then you summon one of the big Beast Warrior monsters, summon the one that attacks twice, and then you basically have game on board anytime. But yeah, going second, it can usually win, and going first, it's just not good going first anymore, and that's problematic. Alright, next we've got Lair of Darkness. I think it's gotten a little bit of a boost, actually. This is Lair of Darkness, or you can say Lair of Darkness Infernoids. Either way, Lair of Darkness, on like pure Lair of Darkness, has gotten a boost with Super Polymerization going to 2, because again, you can fuse away your problems. You make everything a dark with the field spell, and just fuse away anything you don't need, and whatever's left, you activate a virus and destroy whatever's in there. It's kind of insane. It has a very good matchup against things like Sky Strikers. It has a very good matchup against Lair of Darkness, because if you manage to summon a Diablos on turn 1, and then tribute that I'm sorry, not Diablos, Diabolos, and then you tribute that Diabolos and call spell or trap and kind of destroy everything in Mystic Mind's hand, it's kind of broken. With what's it called, what's the virus, Eradicator virus? With Eradicator virus at 3, it's kind of broken. And then we have the Infernoid version, which is even more nasty. Again, I don't know if you can call it tier 2 or 3, because it tops very inconsistently. I think the most recent one was at the Brooklyn Regionals, but it tops very inconsistently. It's a very high skill deck, but it is a very good deck. Dark Lair Infernoids. Then I think, I'm just checking a few last things here in terms of, I want to see if there's any more rogue decks. I think Cosmos it will always be a decent rogue deck. It could use Emergency Teleport at this time. Emergency Teleport at 3 would really help the deck. It would help its consistency quite a bit. But it's still a very good deck. Puts, giant monsters on the field, can't be targeted. A lot of decks can't deal with that, particularly Sky Strikers. I'm looking here. This Gren Maju is going to be, I think, a better deck later, but as of right now, I think it's more of a locals deck. I think when the monster that banishes the top 9 cards of your deck comes out, it might actually be a very threatening card. This is regular, I guess. Regular, what is it, Stun? Stun isn't really that great right now, especially when you have a better version of Stun in Mystic Mind. Stun isn't really a great deck right now. Again, there's no point to play Stun if you can just play Mystic Mind. It just, Mystic Mind does what every Stun deck does better, because it's a field spell, and you can search it with Terraforming, you can search it with Demise of the Land, you can search it with Metaverse, you can search it 3 million different ways during your opponent's turn, so it's not even it's not as good as that deck, so why even bother to play it? All right, then we've got the big three. These are the big three. What are they called? The big three legacy decks: Blue Eyes, Red Eyes, and Dark Magician. Dark Magician, I think, no, I'm sorry. Blue Eyes, I think, has some capability of being a rogue deck. The biggest hit was number 95. I don't, they hit that, and that hits Blue Eyes so badly. You don't even understand how badly it hits Blue Eyes. That was their best, like one of their best cards for the last 2 years, was just summoning those two and then summoning Archbrave during your, sending Archbrave, sending Goliath, activating Archbrave, and then having a Goliath on field. Like, that was one of their best plays for the last 3 years, and it's gone. Just like that. So that's kind of problematic. But I think of all of the big three, Red Eyes, Blue Eyes, and Dark Magician, I think Blue Eyes is, first of all, it's the best deck of the three. But not only that, it's one of those decks that at any given time it can win. When you have the ability to basically easily special summon 3,000 attack monsters, you have a pretty good what is like a formula for winning. Because sure, it's inconsistent, but I'm telling you right now, Blue Eyes can literally beat any deck. It can literally beat any deck, because they easily spam out 3,000 attack monsters, and against something like Sky Strikers, they can just kind of outplay them in certain ways. The biggest weakness of Blue Eyes is itself. I mean, sometimes it's just straight up bricks, and there's nothing you can do, and then you lose. But I think if Blue Eyes, if their consistency could be turned up just a little bit, they would be a significantly better deck. And I don't think that their newest card, Bingo Machine Go, solves that problem, unfortunately. It actually adds more random nonsense to the deck, because you're kind of gambling. Like, let's say you have two cards, you have one card in your hand, or you've already used, that you want. Let's say you want to add a copy of regular Blue Eyes to your hand, right? But you used one already, one's in the graveyard. So you activate Bingo Machine Go, you pick two cards and you pick two of those Blue Eyes from your deck and one other card, and you're leaving it up to chance whether or not, there's so much inconsistency revolved around that card. Plus, it's once per turn, so you can't really play more than two in the deck, because if you draw two, they're basically useless. So overall, I think it has a lot of consistency issues, but it can literally take a game off of any deck, because it's just, when you put out monsters at 3,000 attack easily, you can get over a lot of nonsense. So that's Blue Eyes. Red Eyes is the most enjoyable to play of the three decks, because it has so many different versions, but I think the biggest problem with Red Eyes is that they just keep coming out with new strategies for the deck. Every time, they've made Red Eyes Gemini, they've made it based around Burn, they've made Red Eyes based around Equip cards. Like, it just doesn't stop. Every time a Red Eyes card comes out, it's completely different from every single other Red Eyes card. They just don't have a concise goal whatsoever. Every single time it's different. They've come out with ritual monsters that do nothing for the other cards. It never ends with Red Eyes. Like, you don't even know there's no definitive way to play Red Eyes, because they've come out with like 5 different ways to play it. It doesn't even make sense. Red Eyes Fang with Chain is one of the best cards ever printed for the archetype. It has a few really good cards. A lot of things are very searchable. It has a monster, black something. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. It's something Black Dragon. Basically, you link it away for Link Rebo, you get to search. It's like really good. It has some really good fusion monsters. It has an FTK. It just has too many different strategies going in 20 different directions. It's not as concise as Blue Eyes, where you want to summon two monsters, possibly make a rank 8, or summon 4 monsters and attack for a game. Like, there's no concise strategies. Way too many different directions that the deck can go, and that's its biggest problem. Dark Magician. The problem with Dark Magician is, again, it just relies on too many cards in your hand to even do anything. It's kind of like, during your turn you don't really want to play, and then during your opponent's turn you want things to go off. You want to go first, but at the same time a lot of your cards aren't even active going first, which is problematic. I've seen an Orcus build with it that's pretty good, but like overall it's kind of a funky deck. But it's decent. We've got always heroes. Dark Law is one of the best cards ever printed. They always got a decent chance. Neos is probably one of the less good legacy decks, only because you have to contact views. It's kind of difficult. This is a very good deck, Gravekeepers. It would even be better if it was a little bit faster, if they could speed up the process a little bit with the deck. I'm trying to check down here if there's anything else that's kind of got to mention. Familiar Possess has new cards coming out. I wish Familiar Possess were normal monsters, but they aren't. They have the most complicated effect of all time. So that's Familiar Possess. They have new cards coming out. We'll see where that goes. Shino Birds are a decent deck. I'm looking down here. Samurais are they could be good. They always got the possibility. Alright, this is banned, so I don't even know why it's here. This is unusable. This is an engine. Yeah, this is a major mention, but dangers are played in a lot of these decks up here, but like they're played in Burning Abyss, they're played in Thunder Dragons, but again, they're mostly an engine. They're even played in Blue Eyes, of all things. Yeah, but dangers are more of an engine, they are a deck. Dark Warriors are pretty much kind of taking a back seat, and this is Crusadia Guard Dragon, which is more of an engine used in things like Blue Eyes and Crusadia and what is this, Thunder Dragons. They don't even, I don't think most people don't even play the main deck Guard Dragon cards. So I think that's it. That is, I think, the best way to describe the tier list for 2019, May 2019 tier list. This is the tier list that I think will be going forward into Nationals. We'll see how it goes. If you have any comments, any disagreements, please comment below. Don't forget to subscribe. This is a new type of video I'm trying out. Let me know if you like it. Alright guys, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you really enjoyed this video, be sure to click on one of these 2 available videos on the screen. Thank you for watching.